Welcome to the Lonely Artist Club with your host, Ivana Horvat. Today we have a very special guest named Sarah Whelden, who is a local cinematographer who's here to chat with me about her craft, her inspiration, and how the pandemic has been affecting her during this insano time. Sarah, welcome.
Hello.
How are you?
I am, all things considered, doing reasonably well.
Great. Happy to hear it.
Yeah,
So I guess we can just dive right in if you're game.
I'm game. Let's do
All
it.
right. So let's just start with a brief introduction. What's your name? Where do you live? Where are you from? And kind of like, what do you do? What's your craft?
Sure. My name is Sarah Whelden. I live in Southeast Portland. Originally grew up on Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, and moved out here about, how long ago is that? 12 years ago with my wife. Around 2009, I think. I started taking a few classes at PCC to kind of get back into the industry, and ended up getting an internship out of that, and just sort of worked my way up into a cinematography role, which is what I do now. Light was always what inspired me, I think, first and foremost when it came to working in the film industry. So certainly cinematography is the natural place to try to find within that realm. And for a long time, it's very much been kind of like where I see myself primarily as a filmmaker, is assisting somebody else with their vision.
So what kind of projects are you drawn to, and where do you kind of get your inspiration from?
That's a good question. I am, let's see, thinking back, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, as I've sort of really felt pretty grounded in working as a freelance cinematographer full time, and being at a place where I don't necessarily say yes to every single project that lands on my plate. I find myself really gravitating towards any content that is based around queer content, feminist content, pretty much like anything that is trying to give a voice to someone who needs it. That is, I think, a huge piece of like where I come from when I'm first reading a script and kind of thinking like, is the world a better place with this content in it? I spend a lot of my time, as many folks in the film industry in Portland do, creating commercial content, and which is lovely in its own way. But when I'm creating narrative content, I really want it to be something that is filling my soul with light. So certainly where my mind goes when I'm reading a script and thinking about it visually, what's the subtext and how might we be able to tell that in a way that isn't overtly stated through dialogue or this or that. How can we be creative with the camera and give it its own voice? So that's always kind of behind the scenes for me when I'm considering a project. I get really, really excited about light, and what that can do for a story and how that can shape a character or a moment in a film, or a progression of a film.
Do you have like one shot or one scene or one specific in a film that you've shot or a commercial that you've shot that you were just so stoked and so proud of how it turned out, with the lighting
Ooh,
specifically?
yeah, let me think about that. Feature, I shot two features last spring. And the second of the two was a story with a lot of flashbacks in it. And the director and I had kind of discussed using haze as kind of our like differentiation between now and then. When I work with this director, John Garcia, I do a lot of handheld work for him. In this piece, everything in present day, we wanted to be on a tripod or on a dolly or on a jib, very controlled movement. And we wanted the handheld to come in for the flashbacks. So we shot a number of scenes that took place in this person's life back in the 50s. And we're shooting the whole thing in the basement. And a lot of it was, the whole thing was handheld. And the final scene of that sort of period in this person's life is these two, I want to say an 8 and a 10-year-old, somewhere in that range, wander into a basement of a house that's about to be demolished. And this is all based on a true story. And take a sledgehammer to one of the walls in there. And it was this kind of thing. We only had one chance to shoot, and we really had to shoot it. We had to keep that sort of organic nature to it. And we had to also let these children kind of like get in their space as an actor. Long story short, we could see pretty much the whole basement. So we had lights coming in, and we were using practicals, like exposed bulbs in the ceiling of this empty basement. And so many beautiful moments, I think, came out of that. And there was this sort of like, it was very highly stylized in a way that was fun, but also it felt like real and purposeful and meaningful at the same time.
Describe that feeling of like being like, oh my God, like I'm in it, I'm on set, like everything's flowing. Like I'm sure you get some sort of high out of it. I know I do. What is that like for you as the DP?
It's the best. I think there's something to be said for like when you're on set, it's, the world around you doesn't really exist so much. You're sort of in this this artistic world as a DP. It's this balance of kind of like you were talking about, of sort of the creative and the technical, and a huge piece of the technical has been taken care of in pre-production. And then when you get on set, it's sort of like finding that creativity within that, and then also just constantly solving problems, because like things are constantly changing, and trying to figure out how to work those problems to your advantage. And it really is magical. I don't know how else to describe it. I have this energy when I'm doing that I don't get really anywhere else in my life, not in the same way.
Next, I would kind of want to talk to you about your creative process, and like what does that look like for those of us who don't know? Does maybe a director calls you up and then you sit with them and you kind of establish the look? Like how do you go about your creative process in creating the look of a film, or just outside of the look? What is your process like?
Yeah, there's so many different types of projects that I'm going to just speak mainly to scripted kind of narrative content. Essentially I'll get a script and read it through, and sort of that first reading, I try my best not to overthink it, and then go meet with the director and try to forget all of that and just kind of take in their thoughts and feelings and vision. It's such a fun process, because it's the point in time where we can really define all the rules that are going to make up this project and why we're shooting everything in a certain way. So when we get on set, it's, and things are changing constantly, we have a rule book we can always look back to. And sometimes we have to break those rules, but for the most part, it's like, okay, we can't do it in this way for this reason, but how can we do it within the structure we've already built?
Yeah, I love that, the concept of creating the rules of the world or of the universe. So when things inevitably go crazy on set, you always have that to fall back on.
Yep.
Very good way of putting it. That's interesting. Next question I have for you is, what are some of the challenges that you face in the industry, and what is one thing that you would like to see changed or shifted? Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Cling. Yeah. So, what is one thing that you would love to see? Yeah, change in the industry. What's posed the challenge for you?
Um, I really want to see a lot more equity in the film industry. And I mean that in a really big way. Like, um, I think when you watch Hollywood award shows, it's like a really rude awakening of what's actually happening in our industry. If you, I don't know, I get stuck in my own little like bubble on Instagram of, all the like women POC queer filmmaking pages, and I'm like, wow, the film industry has all these like badass people in it, and it does. But like when it comes down to it, they make up such a small percentage of the top grossing movies, and it's not just about directors or even just about cinematographers, though it is about that as well. It's about everybody behind the scenes and in front of the camera. Um, so I'm really very passionate about that, and I think it's something that we can all do to kind of help lift each other and help where we can in training folks and just bringing folks into projects that aren't getting the work that other people are. If you're making uh, a story about a young trans person, like let's reach out to the trans community and bring them in to help create this. So I think it's a huge conversation that is happening all the time, but it's one that I think can't be stressed enough.
Have you worked on any sets where they've kind of taken on, I don't know, in not interns, but just kind of like taken someone in under your wing?
For sure. I think last year, the Cooch Collective grant winner piece directed by Court Ross um, was kind of like the perfect example of this sort of like mentorship opportunity, but like always putting kind of creative first. They could find either a really good start in this industry or have a moment where they're sort of lifted up in a way that they hadn't yet been on set, and there was just no ego, which is so important. So it's like education goes beyond like just bringing people in, but like reshaping the way we approach everything on set and how we can kind of educate everybody for like what we want filmmaking to look like. So if that means like putting people's pronouns on call sheets and like asking them about that ahead of time, and somebody might say like, oh wow, I don't even know what that is, and you'd be surprised. People are like, I have no idea what is pronouns. And it's like, oh cool, so let's have this little learning opportunity and we can kind of talk to each other about it. So I think it's important to like educate everybody um, in so many different ways to make sure the film industry is what we want it to be. So
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
yeah.
So let's kind of steer into the sad reality of the pandemic.
Oh, I thought we were going to go to happier things.
We'll end on a happy note. Um, how has the pandemic that we're currently experiencing affected you as an artist?
um, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's affected me as a human. I think it's really intense for all of us. Um, you know, um, Certainly lost my income stream and navigating those waters. I'm privileged enough to kind of have a lot that I think will help me get through this and be okay. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared about a lot of the unknowns that this has brought. I've had this script in the back of my mind for who knows how long, and I wrote 5 pages of it, which is not much, but it's 5 pages more than I had written before. I think connecting with self. I think really connecting with my work and how like where I want to grow, and how I can grow. So some of that is, like I said, the writing, also just lots of kind of absorbing different content. So it's weird. I feel like I've been super busy since this all began, but sometimes super busy is just like sitting on my couch, not really sure how to get anything done in that moment. And then, by the time, next thing I know, it's like, well, okay, I lost a day there, but that's okay. So, yeah.
So let's end this interview with, if you could give us some show or film recommendations that you personally love, and also maybe for aspiring DPs in cinematography, fiends, recommendations for, I don't know, tutorials or podcasts or resources to kind of help people on their journey. I would love to hear those 2 things from you.
Sure. I want to say a month ago, it might have been more than a month ago, I watched The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I don't know if you've seen that. It's amazing. It's like such an amazing journey in filmmaking, and told in this way that you're kind of like, I don't know, I feel like for me it was this journey of like, what is happening in this? And then by the end it was like, it just at some point made perfect sense to me. And also I think the cinematography is like the use of telephoto lenses on that is just, it's wonderful. I think The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is like one of the most incredible shows. That there's a circumstance of like the camera working in as its own character, and also like shooting in a way that creates this Broadway experience right now. So Kerner Camera put up on their website a list of its resources sent in from people in the community, and they split it out based on what the content focuses on, whether it's lenses or cameras or cinematography or podcasts or kind of their own thing, or whatever. And there's so much on there that's amazing.
Great.
Just go look. I know like Cook TV, I think they call it, their kind of YouTube channel has some really great stuff with like Bradford Young talking through using practicals and that kind of stuff. Sean Bobbitt's Handheld tutorial is amazing. Yeah, a lot of good stuff on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your quarantine time, even though there's a plethora of it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If you guys want to follow Sarah's work, sarahmakesmovies.com or Sarah Makes Movies. That's the Instagram handle as well. Hire her.